Hey everybody, welcome back to The Truth. Getting back to our normal roots. Let's get into this game. Let's get into this week. This week's college football preview next week, week 14, week 13. I know college football's coming to the wraps. Don't be sad. Still have bowl games, still have playoffs, still have so much more excitement, and then we can be sad. All right, going into this, we have Ole Miss versus Mississippi State Thursday night. I chalk this game up too. It's a Thursday game. You play on Saturday. It's kind of weird. You're not used to it. You're gonna have some wonky plays. It's rivalry week. There's lots of factors into that's kind of like. But Ole Miss comes out with the win. It kind of feels like at this point Ole Miss is out of the race. But this is a good year for Ole Miss, and this is a good standing point to continue on. This good building place Ole Miss is built on from last season, and they're doing well. I'm gonna get more into these teams from this year to last year, the rankings wise, and how each teams have progressed, how last year's teams have regressed. I'm gonna get into that video, but that's gonna come after the playoffs because I don't want to jump ahead of the gun just because teams like Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, teams who are still fighting, really scratching at the playoffs and who haven't even started the playoffs, we don't know who's going to win, what's going to happen. Technically Georgia could have a down season or a worse season if they lost. But we're kind of chalking this up to, hey, we're kind of waiting on, we'll see who wins the playoffs and then I'll make my video. But that's how I chalk this game up to. Friday's games, we had Oregon State versus Oregon. Oregon beat the snot out of Oregon State. Thought it was going to be a little closer. I was totally wrong. Bo Nix, great game. Enough said about that. Same thing. Texas dominated against Texas Tech, 57-7. This was a better Texas team. This was a way better Texas team, and it shocked me because I thought they were going to play down the opponents. I'm proud of Texas. Proud of what they've done, and they could possibly snip in the playoffs. We'll see. Missouri versus Arkansas. Missouri dominates. Makes sense. They were the better team here. They just dominated all sides of the ball. Penn State dominates Michigan State. Nothing to be said. They dominated, kind of sluggish-ish start in the first quarter. But other than that, dominant. TCU versus Oklahoma. We know TCU is good, but they're not that good. Oklahoma balls out. 13. Probably not going to make the playoffs, so there's no point in me saying, hey, you like your defense to be better. Like, yes, you like your defense to be better, but it really doesn't make a difference at this point. Iowa sneaks a close one out against Nebraska. Iowa's this team who plays a lot of really good defense, but not that good of an offense. And, that being said, they'll beat the teams they should beat, but against the teams who are better, they'll probably lose to, and probably in big fashion. Tulane versus UTSA. Tulane is 11-1. If they finish the season out, they'll have a better record than last year, and I think that's what they're fighting for. That's what you're fighting for if you're Tulane. Probably won't make the playoffs. You could, but you probably won't. But this is what you're fighting for. They win 29-16. Georgia versus Georgia Tech. Surprisingly, Georgia Tech kind of stood in here. Georgia had a down game. It is rivalry week. That's how it's kind of hard to judge because since it is rivalry week, it's kind of like a lot of teams play bad or worse, but it is their rival. A lot of these teams are their rivals, so it's hard to go against. But enough being said, makes a lot of sense how number one Georgia wins because they're number one Georgia. Michigan squeaks out against Ohio State, and Michigan proved me right. Ohio State's just not good enough. And you know who it falls on? Ryan Day. Ryan Day has consistently lost all of these games to Michigan. 3 in a row. So, that's where it really falls on him saying, you got to win the big game. I know Kirby Smart also struggled, but at this point, he might be on the hot seat next year. If he's still at Ohio, he's going to be on the hot seat. Next game we have is Washington versus Washington State. Like I said, rivalry week, another close game, but Washington wins out. I do want to see this game. and watch it because they're saying Ward for Washington State had a better game with 317 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. That's something to watch out for. Finish. Florida State and Florida. The question is, and I know people are asking this: if Florida goes undefeated, do they still make the playoffs? And I say yes, because because Ohio State lost. Florida is in the playoffs until they lose. Until they lose or another team loses, they will be in the number 4 seed. That is without a doubt, unless I think Liberty wins out as well and Florida wins out and Florida State, unless all teams win out, then I think we can have the discussion of, okay, who's better, Liberty or Florida State? But until that happens, you got to say, look, they deserve it. They're 4-0. I think they deserve it. Look, it might basically be another TCU type scenario or a Cincinnati type scenario where they're undefeated. They deserve to be there. And you can't argue against it. That is the rules as of this year and the past from undefeated teams on how the committee does it. Alabama versus Auburn. Number 8 Alabama wins 27-24. Almost lost this game. Milroe throws it to the back of the end zone in the corner for a touchdown for 31 yards. And they continue on. Bama, they need to win out. If Bama wins out and beats Georgia, then things start getting interesting because now you have them and Texas fighting for a spot. And you kind of hope Texas drops too, because if they do, well, then you're in. Kentucky versus Louisville. Louisville loses this game. Not surprising though. Louisville home team. Kentucky is a lot better. It was kind of obvious Kentucky was going to win this game. I think, did I say Kentucky was going to win this game, or did I not mention it? I don't know. I kind of made sense that Kentucky was going to win this game. Being who Kentucky is, they gave Louisville some fits, especially later in the game. That second half, they really gave them fits. And enough being said. Texas A&M versus LSU. Like I said before, Texas A&M was basically playing. Was basically just trying to ruin anybody's season at that point. Good defense, though. They had a good defense. Holding LSU to. They hold LSU to 21 points up into the third. That's good. Normally that's not that good. No, that's good. That's really good. But, it just sucks just because, LSU is LSU, and they scored 21 in the fourth quarter. Jaden Daniels, another good season. Malik Neighbors for the Bolitnikoff Award, I believe it is. The Best Receiver Award. 6 receptions, 122 yards, and 2 touchdowns. That's definitely going to help him. Actually, speak on LSU. We'll talk about LSU and Brian Kelly. Potential in the hot seat next year. We'll have to see. Arizona versus Arizona State. Number 15, 59-23. Look, Arizona State's just not good this year. They aren't. Ever since Jaden Daniels left, there has been a step down. But, it's kind of, you got to rebound. You got to really bring in quality guys and really recruit quality players. Arizona took care of business. Still ranked number 15th. Notre Dame versus Stanford. Notre Dame takes care of business. Wins out. Iowa sealing it at the end. Iowa scores. Kansas is an opportunity to tie it. Goes down. Throws the interception. That's game. Iowa State wins. Insane. BYU versus Oklahoma. I'm surprised BYU actually played this close to Oklahoma. I thought Oklahoma was going to do considerably better. They didn't. But enough being said, they went to overtime and they won it. They won double overtime with a fumble recovery, which is very fun to watch. Tennessee dominates Vanderbilt. Don't really know how they scored 14 in the fourth quarter. That's maybe with the backups. I didn't watch this game, so I have no idea. Joe Milton, great game. 3D3, 4 TDs. That's pretty good. NC State beats North Carolina. Drake May did rush for 9 carries, 106 yards, and a touchdown, but couldn't score enough. NC State wins 39-20. Clemson beats South Carolina, close game. And Liberty wins out 42-28 against UTEP. Now I'm very excited to go on this, but Liberty stays in Conference USA. Oh, Liberty just makes things so much interesting because they just throw a fiddle into things, make things really difficult. Going into next week, we have the Conference USA Championship, Liberty versus New Mexico. If Liberty wins, they have a chance at making the call. I believe they have are they in a transition year? I don't remember if Liberty's in a transition year or not. I really don't remember. They could be. They could be in a transition year. But if they're not, they have a chance to make the playoffs. I don't really remember. I'll have to look that up. But if Liberty wins out 13-0, your first season, dog, that's something to build off of. I mean, that's really impressive. Like, you go 13-0 in your first season. Oregon versus Washington. This is going to be really interesting. This is going to be really, really interesting, to say the least, on what's going to happen to see who's going to win it. Because if Washington loses, things get crazy. But if Washington wins out, things kind of stay structured how they are. I think Washington moves up to 3, and Florida State follows right behind them. And then just Ohio State bumps out. Going into the next game, it is Oklahoma State versus Texas. Boy, oh boy. It's going to be really interesting to see. It's going to be really interesting to see who's going to win this game, because if Texas loses, their playoff hopes are kissed goodbye. You know, like, that's it. That's game. Goodbye, adios. Like, that's the end of it. If Oklahoma State loses, Texas has a chance. But you'd be ruling for Bama to pull off the upset. And that's what it comes down to. If you're Bama, you need Texas to lose, and you need to beat Georgia. Either way, you're going to try to beat Georgia. But you need them to lose, because then you're just playing to ruin their season. Going into this game, Georgia versus Bama, this should be a good game. This is going to be closer than expected. I expect it to come down to probably the last 1 or 2 possessions. Holy cow. Texas A&M and Duke's Mike Elko have reached an agreement to make him the scheduled school's next head coach. Did not expect that. That just happened 60 minutes ago. Interesting. Well, shock. I did not expect that. Well then, holy cow. I think it's going to come down to the last 2 possessions. Sorry, that just took me so off guard. SMU versus Tulane, this is what it comes down to. If you're Tulane, you're trying to win out. You win out and you go 11-1. Who's to say you're not a playoff contender next year? Who's to say you're not an undefeated playoff contender next year? You're making the right moves. You're doing the right things. You're improving. You're dominating. That's what it takes. Going on to the next game, which there are only a couple more. It's not a lot of games. I'm gonna talk through these games, and then I'll give you which ones I'd probably tune into on what times. Michigan versus. Sorry, guys, I'm so distracted. I just got some news on some college football stuff. I'm just getting more news about that Texas A&M information, and it's just kind of taking me off guard. I believe Liberty can make the playoffs. I'm not sure on that. Sorry to all that. Michigan versus Iowa. Look, let's be honest. Michigan's probably going to dominate this game, like 23. The line's at 23 in favor of Michigan. Makes a lot of sense. Nothing really to be said here. Could have an upset. Probably won't. Louisville versus Florida State. What's on the stakes? Playoffs. If you're Louisville, you're trying to beat number 5 Florida State. Go 11-1 and build off of it for next year. Jake Plummer, decent season. Decent season college football wise. It's a decent season. It's not world breaking, but it's also not, I'm gonna be the next best thing since sliced bread. Florida State, you're trying to win it and stay in the playoffs. If you win it, you do make the playoffs. You have to fight out for Liberty, but you do potentially make the playoffs and things get interesting. But if you lose it, you kiss that goodbye. With that being said, Friday, I'm watching this Liberty game and then flipping back and forth when 7 starts with Oregon and Washington. That's how I would do it. Going into Saturday, watching the 11 o'clock game, tuning in to the Bama versus Georgia game. I really wouldn't watch that Tulane versus SMU game unless you're really big Tulane rooters or you really want to see it out. Georgia versus Bama, I'd have that circled on. You can flip back and forth. I'm not telling you can't. It's just that's up to you with what you want to do. I would probably watch the Florida State versus Louisville game at 7 just because more stakes on the line. Florida State's probably going to be a team who could potentially be upset over Michigan and Iowa. Not that Florida State's more likely to happen, but I'd watch Florida State. You can also flip back and forth, which I will be doing. I will try to be watching all of these games. Very excited to give my input. It's coming to an end, but I love it. I'll see y'all guys next time.